Hey everyone, welcome to Research Tips and Techniques with Mr. Eckert. I'm going to give you some advice that you can use for better improving your researching skills, and you can use those in your mythology project that you're just getting started on. Let's take a look. So, today we're going to be taking a look at the Big Six research model, which is very popular in Connecticut. It was developed in the 90s by Eisenberg and Berkowitz, and it gives a process for gathering and using information, and particularly it groups successful research habits into 6 stages. So 6 stages that are pretty easy to follow and to understand. So the first one is task definition. So that's basically figuring out what it is exactly that you need to do and what your topic is. Now also we have information seeking strategies next. So that's a fancy way of saying that you make a research plan. Next is location and access. So basically you find the materials and information that you need. Use of information comes after that. So you take notes, record your sources, and use the information. Then we've got synthesis. Now that's when you actually organize the information that you found and build your project. And then finally is the evaluation stage, where you take a look at your work and you make improvements on it. So the first step is task definition. So you start thinking about possible topics. So using the example of your mythology project, there's a few ways you could look at it. First is by region or culture. So where do the myths come from? Are they Greek or African myths? Are they ancient Norse myths or Navajo myths? Another way of looking at it might be myth type, right? So these are some of the myths types that we've talked about. You could do it on fables or creation stories while looking at different cultures. Or you could do something even more specific than that, like specifically ancient Greek hero myths or tales that are retold in different cultures, like Cinderella, for instance. Next, you go down to choosing a topic. So this is Cooper. He's thinking right now about what topic he wants to do for his project. And he's thinking, you know what, I'm going to go with region or culture, and I want to do it on Japanese mythology. And he chose that because he loves anime and he's interested in Japanese culture. Then, still part of stage 1, you got to think about what kind of information would be helpful to you. So the number one thing for this would be to find actual myth stories of the old myths. Another thing that might help is videos of the myth stories, and maybe, but not as much, you could find articles about the myths. Now, we go into stage 2, where we start thinking about, okay, where can we find this information, and we think about possible resources. So for instance, books, right? We've got a lot of great books in the library, and if you go to Dewey Decimal 398, you'll find some great folk tales, some of which are from around the world. There's also periodicals like magazines and newspapers. Now maybe those would be helpful, but since we're looking for older stories, they're probably less likely. And then our main focus in this presentation is on digital resources like the internet. So there are 2 major types of digital resources. The first one are online databases like Research IT Connecticut, Culturegrams, which we use here as well, and Pebble Go, which you might remember from 1st, 2nd grade. And then there's also basic web searches on search engines like Google, Yahoo, websites, and what we call user-controlled sites like Wikipedia. So let's take a look at the pros and cons of these different types of sources, starting with databases. So the pros for the databases are that they have advanced searching and filtering, which we're going to talk about that more later. The sources are reliable. They've already been vetted by somebody, a professional, who made sure that these sources were good quality. And then also, you get access to copyrighted material which wouldn't be available for free on the internet. Now, the cons to that is that it is a limited selection. It's not the whole internet you're searching, and because of that, you can't always find exactly what you need. Plus, information could be stored in different collections or different databases, which means you'd have to search multiple databases. So let's take a look now at an actual database. This is Research ITCT. This is the database that you'll be using here in the library. And let's take a look at some of the pros and cons that we just talked about. So here we have our advanced search options to choose the database or go to advanced search, which we'll see that view in a couple of minutes. Down here you'll notice that we have access to a book source, which is copyrighted material that we wouldn't be able to find on the free internet, at least not without violating copyright law. Here you'll notice that it is a limited selection. For our search, it only came up with 6 results. And on top of that, it says your initial search query did not yield any results. So searching for Japanese mythology didn't even come up in this database. So we couldn't find what we were looking for. And part of the reason for that might be that it's stored in a different collection. We're looking at the book collection of nonfiction. The pros and cons of web searches. So we've got the pros, or you have unlimited selection or close to it, one-stop searching, it's all in one place on the internet, and then also you have access to digital media like pictures and videos. Now the cons of this though is that you have to evaluate the sources extra carefully because there's nobody going through these sources to make sure that they are of high quality. And because it's unlimited selection, there's also too much material to go through, and you're going to get a lot that's not helpful to you. And plus, there's limited access to the best materials. So let's go now to Google. I did the same thing and searched for Japanese mythology. Now look what I have here, unlimited results. Over 13 million results for Japanese mythology. But if I spent the next 20 years of my life doing only that, I would not be able to get through all of those. But it does give me one-stop searching in digital media. There's images, books, videos, shopping, and even more, all in one spot with one search. All right, so here are some of the results that come up. Now, again, take a look. You have to carefully evaluate your sources. Some of these first things that are coming up, we've got Pinterest, which is a social networking site. Anybody can post whatever pictures they want. We've got the second one is a blog. So that means that anybody can, post on a blog. It doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And if you look at that third one, it's a .net, which if you remember when we talked about that, anybody could take out a .net. So does that mean that these sources definitely aren't reliable? Of course not. They could be great resources, but you have to be careful. All right, so now I clicked on the Books tab to show you that the books are available, but look what happens when you go into the books. You see this right here. That shows your limited access to the best materials. So because it's a copyrighted thing, you have to pay to see it. Whereas on a database, the school pays for the resource or it's free. And you're going to find your results cluttered up with ads on regular web searches, especially if you use Yahoo or Bing. Now, as we move into stage 2, information seeking strategies, the first thing that we need to think about are possible search terms. So Cooper is looking for Japanese mythology, right? But there's other ways that you could say this. And by mixing up the words that you use to search, you can get more results and you can get more accurate results. So let's look at mythology for a second. What are some other terms that mean basically the same thing that could be helpful for us? Well, there's terms like myths and fables and folklore and folk tales all refer to mythology. So if we could find Japanese folklore, that would be helpful too to Cooper. But what about Japanese? Is there other search terms for that? Well, yeah, sure, we want stuff that's Japanese, which means it's from Japan, right? So if we search for Japan, if we had fables from Japan, that would be useful to us. Now, what about Asian? What if we searched for something like that? Well, if we did, we would also find mythology from places like China and India that are a part of Asia. But if we were really having trouble finding Japanese mythology, that might be a good idea to look that up. And now that we know what we're looking for, we move into stage 3 where we actually go out and find it. So this is a quick guide on how to use Research IT CT, that database that I showed you before. Now this is something that's available for free to all Connecticut residents and all Connecticut schools. So the first thing that you need to do is just log on to your computer here at the school. Alright, are you logged in? Now you open up a web browser, and up here you go to researchitct.org. Notice no W's before that, just the address. And if you look down the resources page here, notice this resource that says it's for elementary schools. Now what that means, you click on that and it's going to give you resources that are easy to read and they're appropriate for kids your age. Moving on. Now I'm going to show you a trick to make sure that you get the best results possible and that you find as many results that can help you as you can. And it's using something called Boolean operators. Just try saying that out loud one time. It's fun. Boolean. So basically what it means is when you're searching a search engine, you can use these operators or words in order to change the search results in specific ways. So for instance, take a look at the first one. If you use the word and or the plus sign, what happens is that it'll only show results that include both search terms. So for example, we would search for Japanese and mythology because we want both of those words in our results. We don't want things with just Japanese because that's not going to be useful, and we don't want things with just mythology because it's going to give us Greek mythology and things that aren't helpful. Using that will limit your results, but if you want to expand your results, then you use the operator OR. And what that'll do is show all results that include either of the terms you're searching for. So that would be helpful for searching for mythology or folklore, because both of those things mean about the same thing and we want to see both of those results, we use the word OR. Now another way to limit it is using the word not, which can also be done with a minus sign. And what happens when you do that is it does not show the results that include the search term. So if you search for not Chinese or minus Chinese, like say you search for Asian mythology minus Chinese, then it will not show you results that use that word Chinese. Now take a look at this star, the asterisk. Now what this does is it searches for all possible endings of your search term. Now this is a little bit confusing, but look at the example. If you search for myth with an asterisk, then it's going to search automatically for myth and myths and mythology and mythological. Notice how any ending to a word that starts with myth, it will search for. So this will also expand our results. And then finally, you can use parentheses to group your search terms so it's not confusing. So take a look at that example. We put in parentheses, we want Japan or Japanese and myth asterisk or folklore. So that means it's going to search for Japan myth, Japan folklore, Japanese myth, Japanese folklore, etc. And that's the search term that we used here. And notice now that we're using that, we have way more results. We had 6 before, now we have 11,500. So we've expanded it greatly. I also want to call your attention to the advanced search options that we have down here. So you could limit it to only see articles that have the full text. You could limit it by the date, and there's more options below we'll see on the next slide. Right, so here are more advanced search options. The subject, publisher, language, right? Notice number 9 there. It's an article about Japanese mythology, but it's written in Spanish. So if you don't speak Spanish, that's not going to be a very helpful article to you. You can get rid of those results and make sure you're only seeing the ones that are helpful with those options. But I want to call your attention to this one right here. Now, if you look at that, learning from our continental elders, Native American myths, this is not Japanese mythology. This is about Native American mythology. So the question is, why is that showing up in our search results? We didn't search for Native American myths. The answer is here on the next page. When we click on that article and scroll down, notice this part here, non-natives telling native stories. And in this paragraph, it uses the word Japanese. So even though it's got nothing to do with Japanese, it uses the word Japan in the text, which gives us this result, which is not helpful to us. So what do we do about that? Cooper asks. Well, we can go back to our search and select Advanced Search, which takes us to this page. And notice this option here to select a field, which is optional. So right now it's searching for Japan or Japanese and those other things through the whole article. You want to just choose subject from the drop-down menu, so it's only going to give us stuff with a subject of Japanese myths and folklore. But also look at this right here. It says also search within the full text of articles. Now that's what gave us the problem last time, so you want to uncheck that box to solve that problem. To what we need. However, look at this. You're still getting unrelated results. Because look at that, it's talking about the political economy of Japanese financial markets, myths versus reality. So it's still giving us things that use the words but aren't related. Now in a list of 37, maybe we could just skim over and ignore these articles. But if we wanted to even more, we could use these options here in the advanced search. And so notice I've added not. So I do not want anything like economy or economical. I do not want anything with a subject of history. I just want the stories themselves. And when I do that, I've narrowed it down even more to 26. Notice, this is how the Boolean search would look, that exact same search, if I did it into Google. And how many results do I have here in this same search? 37 million. Way more results even than what we had before. The good news though is that by using the Boolean search, the top results are going to be even more accurate. Also, by using Google and the internet, you'll have access to cool resources that you wouldn't find in a database, like these videos where they take Japanese myths and bring them to life in animation, which is something that you may be doing in your project. So these could be really good sources for you. All right, we're almost done with stage 3, but now we need to skim through our sources and filter out the ones that don't help us, narrow down the best sources, and start skimming to find what we need. When we start finding what we need, we're moving into stage 4, the use of information. And the beginning of this means to skim and read and take notes. So see Cooper there, he started taking notes on what he found in his database search. And he's taking 2 column notes like we practiced before. You might want to try that same strategy of I notice and I think. So Cooper noticed that many characters in Japanese myths don't want to dishonor their families, and what he thinks about that is that maybe family history and honor were very important to the Japanese. So he's learning about their culture through their folk tales. Once you've found good information, you want to make sure you cite your sources. But take a look here. Another great feature that a lot of databases have you won't find in a simple internet search is this option on the right where you click on Cite and it will give you citations. It takes you to a page that looks like this, and you can choose the type of citation format that you want to use. Don't forget, if you are using a internet search for your sources, you can use easybib.com to make citations by pasting the website URL into the search bar. Now we're moving on to stage 5, synthesis. This is where you organize the information that you got from all the different sources. So Cooper is looking at 2 different myths now, and he's trying to figure out, what do these myths have in common that could tell us something about Japanese culture? So he notices in both of them, they have examples of siblings fighting. And he says, oh, well, that reminds me of my brother and Elliot and me. We fight all the time. And so he realizes that, family life in ancient Japan might not have been that different from our lives today. So now Cooper looks at another set of stories, and he notices that both of them have wicked, selfish characters. And in both cases, it's an unhappy ending for that selfish character. And so what that says to him about ancient Japanese culture is that, they valued sharing and looking out for other people and not being selfish. So he's drawing conclusions based on that evidence that he finds. Now, we go into the part where you actually build a project. So there's Cooper making his PowerPoint presentation. And now we go into the last stage, which is evaluation. And this is the part where you look over your work and figure out if it's the best job that you could do. And you also look back at your process and think how you could improve on it the next time around. So you check your work and make sure you did the best job that you could. You use the rubric or the assignment guidelines to figure that out and make sure that you have all the requirements. Now, a good thing to do in this stage is to get advice from your teachers and your classmates, and then give you good ideas on how to improve it, and then you make changes as you need to. Alright, I know we covered a lot of material, so raise your hand if you have any questions. Yes, Elliot, go ahead. You have a question? Oh, I think Elliot's confused because we covered a lot of material in a short amount of time. So, let's recap and go over this one more time. This is the Big Six research model. It's a good process that you can use for any research assignment, including this one on mythology. So here's what you do. First, you have to narrow down your topic and ideas. Figure out what you want to focus on. Then you make a research plan. Think about what you're going to search for and where you think you can find it. Then you need to go ahead and find your sources and information using databases, the internet, books, and you can use Boolean searching to help you there. As you're doing that and you find good information, you take notes and make sure that you record your sources that you get information from. Finally, you organize all that information, put it together, and build your project. And when you're done building your project, you go to assess the quality of your work and make improvements. But what do you do after that, I wonder? Well, first, you have some things to think about. You want to make sure you choose the best source for your information. Now, as a general rule, databases are going to give you fewer results, but they'll be better results. General web searches like Google and Yahoo will give you more results, but the quality varies, and you have to be very careful to evaluate your sources. You could use advanced search and Boolean operators to get the best, most specific results possible, using limiters like and not, or expanders like or and the asterisk. But no matter what source you use, you always need to evaluate your sources carefully and always cite your sources. And when you're done, relax. You've done a great job and you can finally feel good about it. Just like Cooper here, whether you like hanging out on the couch or going to play with all of your best friends outside, you've done a great job and you've earned some time to have fun. This is Mr. Eckert, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation and learned something valuable. Good luck on your research assignment.